Okay, it's Brett. I'm back. My camera overheated, so I'm going to start here on this paragraph. How plain is it that the fate of all the existing monarchies of Papal Europe is sealed? There is no longer ground of any kind on which their authority can be based or their functions carried on. Hold on a second. I'm going to shut this window. Too much noise. It's a great breeze coming in, but I want to keep the noise down. Okay. All right. Let's start again. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to start here at this sentence. The camera overheated, and here we go. Now it's cooled off. How plain is it that the fate of all the existing monarchies of Papal Europe is sealed? There is no longer ground of any kind on which their authority can be based or their functions carried on. All sense of obligation to them as appointed conservators of order is gone. Their subjects, having lost all respect for the authority of the great ruler, their armies fraternize with the people, and in these circumstances, their last prop having given way, there appears no possibility of saving them from destruction. Already we behold their power completely paralyzed, and even where the throne is still left standing, law is prostrate, and all the functions of government are virtually executed by the mob. But what is to take the place of those empires that are now on the eve of dissolution? If the governments that already exist cannot be maintained, where shall we find elements for those or for the reconstruction of new ones? Let's repeat that again. But what is to take the place of those empires that are now on the eve of dissolution? If the governments that already exist cannot be maintained, where shall we find elements for the reconstruction of new ones? The causes so powerfully at work in society at this moment are all of a disorganizing kind, where no right to exact obedience is acknowledged. Keep in mind, this is 1848, James Aiken Wylie is referring to. And no power to compel obedience exists. How is anything bearing even a faint resemblance to government to be constructed? It is on anarchy that Europe is at this moment drifting. The image is in the act of being ground to powder, and the mighty winds are rising in their strength to sweep from the face of the earth its very particles. The shocks of the great earthquake have begun, and the islands disappear, and the mountains are moved out of their place. All attempts, whatever the country in which they are now making to restore order and erect new constitutions, have only one issue, and that is greater confusion. France was able in 3 days to abolish her monarchy, but how many ages will she require, judging from her present rate of progress, to construct her new republican edifice? Her people live in the midst of perpetual alarms. Her factions are daily growing in strength and fierceness. Bloody conspiracies are breaking out and dragging her ere she is aware. to the brink of a universal massacre. Unhappy France! She has denied the doctrine of an immorality. She has ridiculed the idea of hell. And is there no reason to fear that she is about to become in her own person a proof of the doctrine which she has ridiculed? Is there no reason to fear that she is about to afford to the world an awful demonstration that whether or no there is a hell thereafter? There may be a hell here, a hell upon the earth. Let the passions of her masses be unchained but a little more, and France will be a pit of torment, one wide region of social burning and woe, set forth in the midst of Europe as a terrible sign to its nations, suffering like Sodom and Gomorrah, the vengeance of fire. If we turn to Germany on the east of the Rhine, we find that she has not cast away so completely as her neighbor on the west of that river the principles of stability and unity. The Mephistopheles spirit of negotiation. The Mephistopheles spirit of negation does not as yet possess her to the same degree. She does not only destroy, she constructs. The wide scene of disorganization she is beginning to exhibit is gilded by the golden rays of spirit of German poetry. For we cannot but regard as the dream of the poet, rather than the sober conception of the statesman, the project she is now attempting to realize of restoring the old Germanic Empire, surmounted by the crown of the Caesars. The project rises before us in the days of uncertainty and misgiving, in imposing splendor of Aladdin's castle, a palace of the Sicilian fairy queen, built too, we suspect, like hers, of sunshine and sea mist. While we write, the deputies have assembled to whom the grave task has been entrusted of framing that constitution which is to combine into one great empire the various Germanic states, and by developing their elements of greatness and concentrating their energies, make them once more a unity and power in Europe, a bulwark between the absolutism of the East and the republicanism of the West. Are the men competent or circumstances propitious? Alas, their first meeting was passed in disorder. But though the men were approved political sagacity and prudence, there are insurmountable obstacles in their way. Every step will create rival claims and rouse conflicting interests, the adjustment of which were difficult at any time, but altogether impossible at present. Who will wear the imperial crown? Will the Emperor of Austria permit it to pass from his brow? Or will Frederick William of Prussia, who is to bring all his states within the circle of the Confederation yield to the more ancient claims of the House of Habsburg? Where shall the capital be fixed? Will Vienna and Berlin be content to descend to the second rank, while Frankfurt on the Main rises at once from provincial obscurity into imperial splendor? How shall the independence of the separate states be secured consistently with the sovereignty of the whole? Will the anomaly offered by the composition of the second chamber, according to which sovereign princes shall sit side by side with their own subjects, form no obstruction? Such are a few of the difficulties that stand in the way. They stamp the scheme with an imperial character. Its realization at this moment, when the work of internal disorganization is going on so rapidly, when the waters of republicanism are rising on the western frontier of Germany, and the tempests of war are gathering on her northern and eastern borders, it is utterly hopeless. Thus, all attempts at reconstruction end only in failure. The great settlements of Europe, too, are disregarded. Its last treaty, that of Vienna, has gone to the same bourne as the treaties of Utrecht and Westphalia. But other bonds, more powerful to conserve society than the treaties of princes, have been given to the winds. The sense of obligation and the love of order on the part of the people. Thus, society has lost its cement. There is no principle of cohesion in it, and therefore there is no visible limit to the changes the world is now undergoing. There is no resting place in sight. So far as the eye can reach, there is nothing in prospect but change coming after change, till society shall have been resolved into its ultimate elements. When the seventh angel had poured out his vial, and the great voice from the throne had announced, "It is done," there were voices, thunders, and lightnings. And we will continue here in this next subchapter of the seventh vial next time. And I'll see you then. God bless and bye-bye.